if your anxiety isn't really yours? What if the fear that hits you in a quiet room, the panic that shows up out of nowhere, the way your heart races for no obvious reason, doesn't start in your childhood or in your brain or even in your lifetime, but in someone else's? Someone who died long before you were born. Someone whose name you don't know. Someone who never had the chance to take a DNA test or post a photo or leave a diary. Yet somehow, the echo of their fear is still living inside your body. We like to think of memory as something that lives in the brain. You remember your first school, your first love, the first time you were truly scared. But there is another kind of memory, a memory that doesn't care about your conscious mind at all. A memory written into how your cells behave, into how your hormones spike, into how your body prepares for danger before you even know there is danger. Tonight, we're gonna take you somewhere your therapist can't go, somewhere your parents can't explain, somewhere times can't access with words. We're gonna open the basement door of your DNA. This is not a story about past lives. It's not about reincarnation or mystical curses. This is a story about something colder and scarier. Your body quietly remembering what your ancestors went through and adjusting itself without asking your permission. Imagine a woman a few generations before you. You don't know her name. You don't know her face. But your existence depends on her. She is standing in a line with other people. There is not enough food. The winter has been too long. The harvest failed. Her body learns something from this. Food is not guaranteed. You are not safe. Inside her cells, chemical marks begin to appear on certain genes, not changing the letters themselves, but changing how loudly those genes speak, turning some up, turning others down. Her body shifts into survival mode. It stores fat more aggressively. It becomes more sensitive to stress. It holds on to energy like someone who never knows where the next meal will come from. Eventually, somehow, she survives. She has a child. That child grows up in a slightly better time, but inside them, the settings are still turned to survival. Their body still behaves as if famine could arrive any moment. Their cells carry the same chemical marks. Fast forward a few generations. You are living in a city, food is everywhere, supermarkets glowing at night, delivery apps, coffee shops on every corner, and yet your body still behaves like the famine is just one bad season away. You gain weight easily. You feel stress like a constant background noise. Your sleep is light. Your heart is jumpy. You don't trust that good things will last. You blame yourself. You say, I just have bad discipline. You say, it's my personality. I'm just an anxious person. But what if your body is just doing what it was times trained times to do by someone else's catastrophe? What if part of your personality is actually inherited strategy? A survival script written by people who didn't know your name, but desperately wanted you to exist. We're going to explore that script. We're going to talk about how trauma can leave fingerprints on DNA regulation, how stress can echo across generations, how your body might still be reacting to wars you never fought, to hunger you never felt, to danger you never saw. And in the end, we're going to ask a hard question. If your body remembers what your ancestors wanted to forget, can you be the one who finally rewrites the story? Welcome to Human Decode Project. To understand what your body is doing, we have to zoom in below the level of thoughts and feelings and look at your cells like a programmer looks at code. You've heard that DNA is your genetic blueprint. 4 letters, A, T, C, G, endless combinations. A long, long book that tells your cells how to build you, but here's the twist. It's not just the letters that matter, it's also how that book is times read asterisk. Imagine your genome as a gigantic library. Thousands of genes equals thousands of books on the shelves. Your cells can't read every book at once. They have to choose. Some genes are opened and read loudly. Some are read quietly. Some are kept locked most of the time, except in emergencies. What decides which books are opened? Chemical bookmarks. Little tags added onto the DNA or onto the proteins that package it. They don't change the underlying text. They just control how accessible it is. This system has a name, asterisk, asterisk, epigenetics, asterisk, asterisk, epi meaning above or on top of genetics. Think of epigenetics as software instructions running on stable hardware. Your genes are hardware. Your epigenetic marks are settings. Now, here's where it gets interesting and scary. These settings are not random. They respond to the environment. Imagine your ancestor again. Maybe now it's a man living through a war, sirens at night, explosions far away, or not so far. People disappear, news travels slowly, no one trusts anyone. His body learns is greater than, the world is unpredictable. Danger can come at any moment. Stress hormones flood his system, his body adjusts. Heart rate, blood sugar, immune system, sleep patterns. Deep in his cells, epigenetic marks shift on genes related to stress response, fear, learning, metabolism. It's as if his body is turning physical knobs to better survive chaos. Now, if all this stayed confined to his own body, the story would end here. But it doesn't. When he has children, some of these knob settings are partially passed on. Not the original stress, not the memory of particular explosions, but a times-tuned sensitivity asterisk. His children's bodies are born a little more ready to react, a little quicker to produce stress hormones, a little more likely to store energy, to stiffen, to flinch. The child grows up and thinks, is greater than, this is just who I am. Maybe they become hypervigilant. Maybe they have trouble relaxing, even in safe places. Maybe they feel constant guilt for no clear reason. They don't know they might be carrying a nervous system that was pre-trained for living in a war zone. Now, imagine this chain repeating through multiple generations. Famine, war, genocide, slavery, forced migration. Every time, bodies adjust. Every time, epigenetic marks shift. Every time, some of those shifts make it into the next generation's starting settings. By the time it gets to you, the original events are gone. Nobody in your family talks about them anymore. Maybe they literally don't know. Paper records burned, names lost, borders moved. But your body still reacts as if something times bad could happen at any time. The flood of stress that makes no sense. The panic attacks with no obvious trigger. The deep-rooted feeling that good things can't last. You try to tie these feelings to your own life. Maybe you look for explanations. It's because of my childhood. It's because of my job. It's because of this relationship. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes what you're really feeling is latency. You are the latest version of a system that has spent centuries, maybe millennia, training itself to survive. Here's another angle. Epigenetic changes don't only come from disasters. They can also come from smaller, quieter patterns that happen again and again. A family that never speaks about emotions? A culture where fear is normal but never named? A pattern of always expecting betrayal? A habit of shrinking, apologizing, preparing for impact? Year after year, generation after generation, the same emotional climate can carve its own grooves into biology. Your body learns that it must stay small, stay alert, stay ready. Not because times chose that, but because somewhere in your line, it was the safest way to stay alive. And so you end up with a paradox. On paper, your life looks safer than the past. No bombs, no famine, no invaders at the door. Inside, your nervous system is still living in the previous century. So here's the question. If your body can inherit fear, can it also inherit strength? If trauma can echo down the generations, could healing echo too? We don't fully know yet, but we do know this. The same epigenetic system that can be tuned by stress can also be tuned by safety. Your ancestors used this system to survive what they couldn't control. Maybe you can use it to build something they couldn't even imagine. Let's step out of the lab and back into your life. Right now, you might be thinking, is greater than. Okay, cool science, but what am I supposed to do with this? How does knowing that my great-grandparents' trauma lives in my cells help me pay rent, deal with anxiety, or fix my relationships? Here's the answer. It gives you context. And context changes everything. Think of your life like a movie that starts in the middle. You walk into the theater halfway through. On the screen, there's chaos. Characters are arguing. Someone is crying. Someone is running. Someone is giving up. If you don't know what happened in the first half of the film, you might think, is greater than, they're just dramatic, is greater than, they're broken, is greater than, they're weak. But if you saw the beginning, what they survived, what they lost, how many times they were betrayed, you'd understand their reactions differently. You are that character in the middle of the film. Epigenetics is not an excuse. It's a missing first act. When you realize that part of your fear, your caution, your self-sabotage might be inherited survival code, something subtle can shift. Shame starts to loosen its grip. Instead of what's wrong with me, you can ask a better question. Is greater than what was done to the people who came before me? Is greater than what did they have to adapt to? Is greater than what did their bodies learn that mine is still trying to honor? You are not responsible for what happened to them, but you are responsible for how you move forward with what you carry. And here is where something powerful becomes possible. You might be the first generation that has enough safety, enough information, and enough tools to actually rewrite some of this code. Imagine sitting with your anxiety not as an enemy, but as a very old messenger. It comes in the form of tight shoulders, racing thoughts, shallow breath. You pause and think, is greater than, okay, I see you. Maybe you kept someone alive once. Maybe you helped my grandparents survive a situation I will never fully understand. Thank you for that. Is greater than. But I am not in that place anymore. I'm in a different world. You don't have to be this loud now. That might sound small, just words. Just a tiny mental shift. But remember, your nervous system is plastic. It can learn, it can recalibrate. When you consistently offer your body new evidence that it is safe, deep rest, stable relationships, gentle environments, nervous system regulation over time, those settings can begin to shift. You won't erase your history. That's not the goal. You will integrate it. Maybe you're the first in your line who can sleep without listening for bombs. The first who can love without expecting to be sent away. The first who can eat without fearing that food will run out. Your body may take a while to believe this. It may protest. It may pull you back into familiar chaos because chaos feels like home. But if you keep showing up differently, choosing not to repeat certain patterns, choosing not to pass certain wounds forward, that is already a kind of genetic activism. You are interrupting an echo. Think about the people who come after you. They may never know the full story of what your grandparents survived. They may never know what times you went through, but they might grow up in nervous systems that are a little less tight, a little less hypervigilant, a little more capable of joy. They might inherit a body that is less obsessed with survival and more open to creation. That is how healing becomes ancestral. Not through magic, not through slogans, but through 1,000 small decisions you make in the present to rest, to feel, to not run from discomfort, to stay when you want to disappear, to say, this pattern stops here. You are not starting from zero. Behind you are bodies that endured famine, war, humiliation, poverty, silence, bodies that kept going even when they didn't want to, bodies that never had the luxury of thinking about self-care or trauma or nervous system regulation. They just survived. You are the continuation of that survival. And also, possibly, its upgrade. Picture this. All your ancestors standing behind you, stretching back into the dark. You don't know their names, but you can feel their presence, thousands of them packed into the narrow corridor of time that leads directly to you. They are not perfect. Some of them did terrible things, but they all have one thing in common. They did not let the line end. Even in the worst moments, some small part of them kept going. Now, for the first time, someone in that line times can look both ways, backwards, to see the chain of adaptation and trauma you inherited. Forward to see the possibility of ending certain cycles. Your body remembers what they went through, but your body also experiences something they didn't. The chance to consciously choose how this story continues. Not just for you, for whoever comes next. So the next time your heart races in a safe room, or your chest tightens before you send a message, or you sabotage something good for no obvious reason, try something new. Instead of attacking yourself, pause and ask, is greater than, is this only mine, or am I feeling the echo of someone who didn't get to finish their story? You may not be able to erase that echo, but you can do something more powerful. You can be the first person in your bloodline who hears it and gently answers, is greater than I hear you, is greater than I know why you're afraid, is greater than, but I'm here now, is greater than I'm not in that world anymore, is greater than, and I will not pass this fear forward unchanged. In that moment, you are not just healing yourself, you are quietly editing the future, one heartbeat at a time.